The register file card we've discussed in previous episodes is now back from the manufacturers. It's all fully populated and assembled. Just giving you an overview of it, a little bit of electronics porn. And in this episode, we are going to review and basically test it. So I will leave you now for a few seconds with the images of the card, and then I will be back on the bench for us to perform a few tests. You will see that I will get confused a little bit during the testing, so forgive me for that. But at the end of the day, the tests will give us a reliable answer about whether the card is working or not. So for now, enjoy the images for a few more seconds. Alright, this has been the ALU board that we've covered in previous episodes, and designed, tested, did everything. So let's set this one aside, and this is the new board. That's the register file board. The 4 registers are here on top: AH, BH, AL, and BL. Everything else is just logic to deal with bus contention and display the results on these LED bars that you see here. This one displays the results of what is on the local bus. These here display the contents of the 4 registers, and these display the values of the different control signals. And this is the clock button. We don't need a reset button for this one, just the clock will allow us to do everything. These dip switches set the control values if we are using this board in standalone mode. In other words, if this little jumper is not there, as it's not right now, it's not shunting the header, then this is in a standalone mode for us to use separate from the rest of the system. And these 2 dip switches here drive a certain value into the local bus. The local bus, which you see here around, that's just the local segment on this board of the internal bus of the CPU, and the internal bus comes and goes here through the backplane connector. It's driven in and out by these 2 transceivers here, and these are 33 ohm resistor networks to absorb reflections. And one of these 2 here will drive the external data bus, also on the backplane. It depends on whether you're driving the external data bus from the high byte of the local bus or the low byte of the local bus. That's why there are 2 transceivers here. And everything else we've discussed before. So let's go ahead and test this board. Okay. Power comes in here. Let me put this one there. I'm going to use this little jumper cable to set dip switches. Let's turn on the system. Oh, before we turn it on, let's do a quick check of the resistance across power and ground to make sure we don't have a short circuit. Okay, so let's take it from here. It can be anywhere. So after the capacitors charge, the resistance is above 500 ohms. So let's just check what it is now. Well, it's past 3 kilo ohm probably. Yeah, over 3 kilo ohm. So that's okay. That's safe to turn on. So now let's move to voltage mode. Turn it on. And let's check that the voltages are getting there that the voltage is okay. 4.982, so that's 5 volts. That's pretty good. It's what it should be. So let's test it. Let's first set some values on the local bus via these dip switches. I will set the high nibble high on the high byte of the bus and the low nibble high on the low byte of the bus. That's what you see there. So now let's load these two values onto the registers. So let's load A high and B high with this value and A low and B low with this value. So we need to, and now I need a magnifying something. So let's see, A low load enable, B low load enable, and A low and A high and B high load enable. So let me check. A low load enable, B high load enable, A high load enable, and B low load enable. So now this value should go here and here, and this should go here and here when we press the clock. And that's what we have it. So now let's deactivate the load enables before I forget and get confused. So now let's set a different value here. Let's say the two middle bits are on here, and here I will put the 2 bits on the sides. There. So now I'm going to load this into A high and this into B low. So A high load enable, which is here, and B low load enable, which is there. So now this should go here and this should go there. And there we have it. Turn off the load enables before I forget. So now let's do 2 parallel operations, which this architecture allows. Remember, the high byte and the low byte of the internal bus, they are independent, which allows Talos to do a register-to-register move operation on the high byte and another completely separate one on the low byte of the internal bus. So 2 operations in the one cycle. So let's do that now. Let's load B high with the contents of A high, and in parallel let's load A low with the contents of B low. That's the idea. So B high load enable and A low load enable here. And now we need to put A high output enable and B low output enable, so they drive the bus instead of the switches driving the bus. And the moment I turn on the output enable for A high, this will change, because now the bus will not be driven by the dip switch, it will be driven by, oh, but this value is the same. I have a better idea. Let's drive the buses from B high and A low, so they are different from these values here. So let's drive the high bus from B high, and then this should change. So B high output enable. So this now should change with the contents of B high. Let's see. Yeah. So now you see this is the content of the bus, is the same as the contents of register B high. So B high is driving the bus, and let's the high byte of the bus, and now let's drive the low byte of the bus from A low. So A low output enable, which is this. So this should change to reflect the contents of A low. And now let's do A high load enable and B low load enable. So A high gets the value of B high via the bus, and B low gets the value of A low via the bus. So these are 2 completely independent register-to-register move operations in one cycle. So A high load enable, A high load enable, and now a low load enable. A low load enable is there. And B high load enable. No, A high load enable. Yeah, so now A high load enable, yeah, B high output enable. So B high will output something into the bus, its value into the bus, it's already there, and A high should latch it on the next rising edge of the clock because A high load enable is on. And on the other side we have B low output enable. So B low is driving the bus, which indeed it is, we see it here. And now A low load enable, it's there. So A low, the contents of A low should become the same as this, and the contents of A high should become the same as this. So I'm basically moving B to A. So let's see. Yes, so they are identical now. Now, one other test we can do is to see if the direction of these transceivers are working fine. Because I have an output enable here locally, both from B high and B low, so B high and B low are driving the local bus, so these transceivers should now transmit to the rest of the computer because the buses are being driven from this board. If I turn off both output enables, let me turn off everything. Okay, everything is off. And if I now turn on an I/O enable for the local bus together with an input enable, then the bus should be driven from the outside and the local bus should float. So let's do that. B high I/O enable, and I'm not B high, internal bus high out, internal bus high I/O enable, and internal bus low, can hardly see it, I/O enable. Okay, so now the I/Os are set. The buses are still not floating because an I/O enable could be an output. It could be trying to put something on the external data bus. But now when I put an input enable for the external data bus, then the local bus will be driven by the external data bus, but there's nothing driving it here, so the local bus will float and these values should float. So let's do that now. External data bus input enable, and you see the values float. As a matter of fact, because it's floating now, the pins here on the backplane connector that correspond to the external data bus should become little antennas. So if I run my finger, you should be able to see exactly when I run it over the pins of the external data bus. You see? It's a little antenna now. If I run my hands around it, even on top, because the pins are on top, you can see that it's floating. It's just floating. So that's correct. Now it should stop floating if I disable the external data bus as input, which is EDBI E. So if I disable this now it's not floating anymore, because now although the I/O is enabled, in other words the local bus is connected now to the external data bus, it's working, the external data bus is now being driven from the local bus, not the other way around, so the buses don't float. So I think this pretty much concludes our test. This is working just fine, and if you paid attention, I will begin introducing to you now certain things I did in the design that I didn't discuss before, but I did it to enable more what we call ILP, or instruction level parallelism, the thing that superscalers and VLW processors had. It was a big thing in the late 90s.
even participated in the design of one, the Philips Trimedia, which was a 5-issue slot VLIW processor, could do 5 operations in a single cycle. Here you can already see that we can do 2 register-to-register operations in a single cycle. One on the high byte of the bus, the other on the low byte of the bus. And that's the first instance or the second instance of instruction level parallelism that I discussed, because as we've seen in previous episodes, the ALU also has a low byte and a high byte, and it can do 2 different parallel ALU operations on 8 bits at the same time. So 2 ALU operations on 8 bits at the same time, and 2 register-to-register operations, different ones at the same time, or one of each. You can do 1 ALU operation using the operand on the low byte of the internal bus, and a register-to-register move operation using the high byte of the internal bus. That you can do. So you can do 2 ALU operations, 2 register move operations, or 1 ALU operation and 1 register move operation at the same time. There will be more instruction level parallelism, but I'm going to introduce it to you slowly. For now, this works. Hooray! We can go to the third board now. So this is it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. All the files necessary for you to order your own register file card, just like the ALU card, they are on my GitHub repository. The link is in the description. Just keep in mind that I may still decide to change the design of these cards as we go ahead in this project. So these are not guaranteed final yet, but they are likely final. Anyway, you can download everything from there, all the information. And I will see you next time with the design of the addressing logic card. Stay tuned for that. Take care.